Let's talk more about the idea that a good proposal, journal article, a good piece of empirical writing represents telling a cohesive story. Let's also take a look at some of the characteristics of a cohesive story in a journal article, and actually look at an example of an article that I think is written in a way that provides a compelling and cohesive story. A journal article can be thought of as a short story with a single linear narrative line. Let's look at a good example. The Simpson, Rodenbush, and Earls article in 1997, published in 1997 in the journal Science, really looking at neighborhood influence on community violence. As you look at the beginning paragraphs in this article, what's the story that Simpson and Rodenbush and Earls is telling? From the first page, can you determine what the story is that the authors are trying to tell? There are certain characteristics that you find in a good empirical story. Conceptual clarity. This involves writing very simple and direct. One author recommends that we try not to say something with long, complicated sentences. For example, a sentence that may have 30 words, when we could have said it in a short, concise sentence of 10 words. As you look at the Simpson, Rodenbush, and Earls article, and you begin to read their discussion of both individual efficacy and collective efficacy, to what extent do you see in their writing a clear clarity in their presentation of those two concepts? A good story, empirical story, is one that reflects on the part of the writer a keen awareness of the audience. As we think about social work research, our audience tends to be a multidisciplinary audience. And so we often need to write in such a way that we can reach a broad reader base for multiple readers who are coming to our work for multiple disciplines. reaching that broad reader base often requires us to try to avoid using a lot of discipline-specific or professional-specific jargon. It requires us to try to be concise, but yet complete in the way that we present theoretical ideas. It often requires us to provide illustrations of theoretical points as a way to improve the clarity of our presentation of concepts and ideas or terms, technical terms, that may be unfamiliar to individuals in other disciplines. Look at this example from the Roddenbush, the Simpson, Roddenbush, and Earls article. Is this an example? Do you see this as an example where an illustration, or in this case, an analogous process at the individual level that individuals might be familiar with, is being used to help illustrate the concept as it's being applied at a community level? In presenting and being very clear conceptually, but also making sure that your work and your ideas are grounded not in a single author's work, but in a larger body of research. Good storytelling involves avoiding trying to open with statements that focus on a particular author, but focus on opening statements, beginning paragraphs to a particular section of the introduction, for example. Those statements open with presenting the larger ideas or concepts and really focusing a discussion around a larger set of ideas and concepts that were gleaned from multiple authors. Paying attention to and scrutinizing the writings of researchers who are able to present very complicated ideas with a great deal of conceptual clarity will be valuable in developing your skills as a researcher and being able to communicate your research findings. I've always found that Simpson, Roddenbush, and Earls, individually and when they work together, are researchers who are able to present very complicated ideas with a great deal of conceptual clarity, able to write in such a way that reaches a broad audience. And they have been individuals who I've tried to carefully examine their writing, to borrow from their writing those things that I could use to improve the conceptual clarity of my writing. And I'd encourage others to find researchers who they can scrutinize their writing and utilize that as a way of improving their skills in presenting their empirical work with a great deal of conceptual clarity.